Hey, we made it to week 2 of the show, and shout out to all 16 of my subscribers. You're basically family at this point. Listen, we're small, we're building, we're still making good picks. So if you're listening, send it to your boys and get the word out there. With that being said, anyone new listening here, welcome. I talk ball, I talk bets, and I promise you this show is going to get better. We keep it simple. Good vibes, real analysis, no fake edge talk, and hopefully some winners along the way. Point of the show, give you some angles on matchups. If you like something, tail it. If you hate it, fade it. Feel free to drop your plays in the comment section, argue with me, whatever. If you made it this far, about 30 seconds into the show, hit that subscribe button. All right, enough of that. Let's get into it. First game on the docket, we're heading to Arizona, Jags at Cardinals, and I need to start with the Jaguars because we did sniff out the money line spot last week, but the Jags win wasn't as dominant as you think. Do not be fooled by that 35-6 win. It wasn't a statement win. It wasn't Trevor Lawrence figuring it out. It was the Jaguars beating up on a broken, injury-gutted Chargers roster. They had a backup offensive line. Defense was missing pieces. Herbert stuck behind the collapsing pocket. Jacksonville didn't earn that blowout. The Chargers pretty much handed it to them. Trevor Lawrence did nothing. They won in spite of him. He was 14-22 passing, threw for about 150, and had a pick. The offense leaned on 47 rushing attempts for almost 200 yards, and you can't count on Tootin and ETN to do this week in and week out because, let's face it, they're just not those dudes. And just as a side note, injury report had both of these guys limited in practice this week, so that is something to watch. The angle of that bet last week wasn't betting on the Jaguars. It was more so fading the Chargers. Now, was I expecting them to win by 30? Hell no, but that sets us up perfectly for this week. Let's go to the Cardinals. Last week, Arizona played the best offensive game of the season, and they still got blown out. Listen to this. They outgained San Francisco by 200 yards. They ran 40 more plays. Jacoby Brissett broke an NFL record with 47 completions, and the Cardinals still lost by 19. And the 49ers did nothing, yet they still won by 3 scores. First play of the game, 98-yard kick return touchdown. The Cardinals had 4 turnovers. They gift wrapped the 49ers points. Nothing was earned by San Francisco. This was self-destruction, not domination. The Cardinals aren't a bad team. They're just a sloppy team, and here's the difference. Sloppy is fixable. Bad isn't. People keep saying the Cardinals are terrible. They're not. They're competitive every week, and they lose because of self-inflicted disaster, not because they can't hang on the field. We talk about the 49ers game earlier, but what about the week before? The Seahawks, another giveaway. They held Seattle to almost nothing, but they gave up 2 defensive touchdowns. You can't win in the NFL spotting somebody a pick 6 and a scoop 6. That wasn't Seattle beating Arizona. That was Arizona beating Arizona again. And the week before that, they dominated the Cowboys, and at one point they were winning the game 24-7. They never trailed a second in that game. The Cowboys are a good team. Every week they move the ball. Every week they outgain teams. Every week they show flashes of being a legitimately good football team. And I'm telling you, this team is not as bad as everyone thinks. They're not untalented. They're not outmatched. They're not getting bullied. They're just sloppy, undisciplined, and unlucky at times. And that might not sound great, but it's very fixable. And if they clean up even half of the mistakes they've made over the past 2 weeks, I think they could beat this fraudulent Jacksonville team outright. And listen, the Cardinals aren't a 3-7 football team. They just keep lighting themselves on fire. They outplay teams. They outgain teams. They move the ball at will. But here's why this week the script flips. Jacksonville coming off a fraudulent fake blowout. Arizona extremely undervalued off of one of the weirdest losses of the year. Everyone is down on Arizona because the scoreboard looked atrocious. But the actual play on the field wasn't as bad as everyone thinks. The Cardinals don't have a talent problem. They have a mistake problem. And mistakes, very fixable. They correct this. It's not going to last forever. Jacksonville, meanwhile, has a quarterback who's struggling, 2 banged-up running backs, and a defense that hasn't faced a real opponent in weeks. This is a straight buy low, sell high spot. If Arizona plays a clean game, even 70% clean, I think they could win this outright. So give me the Cardinals +3. And very live on the money line. All right, I talked way too much about how passionate I am about the Cardinals. I'll keep these next ones a bit shorter. Next game, we're headed to New Orleans. We're going to the Falcons versus the Saints. And let's get into the Falcons first. Let's be brutally honest. Kirk Cousins is done. He's not struggling. He's not rusty. He's done. And he's your starting quarterback for the Falcons this week. Post Achilles, no mobility. No ability to drop the ball off of his back foot in the pocket. He panics in the pocket. He went 6 for 14 for 48 yards versus Carolina. This isn't a quarterback who it's just, oh, I need some timing reps. This is a quarterback whose body is not capable of being an NFL quarterback. And now he's starting behind a banged-up offensive line, and they're missing their wide receiver one and Drake London, which is probably the biggest non-QB injury of the week. Drake London, he's basically their possession wide receiver, their third down receiver, their red zone receiver, their bailout receiver, the only one who could catch contested passes, and the only guy defensive coordinators scheme against. Without him, Cousins is pretty much throwing to a wide receiver room that's bottom of 3 in the league. I would say maybe behind the Giants and the Jets. And, listen, Kirk with no mobility behind a shaky offensive line. This is a full-scale meltdown brewing for the Atlanta Falcons. Let's talk about the Saints a little bit. Now, I get it. The Saints aren't lighting the world on fire by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this is a good spot for the Saints coming off of a bye. You got 2 weeks of prep for Shough. That's going to matter a lot. This gives a young quarterback, a fresh game plan, a reset mentally, 2 weeks of prep against a defense that has a lot of weaknesses, and a chance to really fix his mechanics, timing, install a new game plan. So Saints, they're not a great team. I'm not expecting, like I said, I don't think Shough is going to go light the world on fire, but the Falcons are a bottom 5 team in the NFL right now. They have a cooked quarterback, no wide receiver one, a broken offensive line, injuries everywhere, low morale, no identity. Meanwhile, the Saints come in, they're healthy, off of a bye, 2 weeks of full prep, and they have a quarterback that gives them stability, mobility, and competence. One team is resetting and recalibrating. The other is spiraling. This is a spot where the Saints don't need to be great, they just need to be functional. And the Atlanta Falcons aren't even close to functional right now. Give me the Saints at home on the money line. All right, next game I want to get to. Eagles headed to Jerry's World. Cowboys getting 3.5 at home. And let's start with one of the biggest storylines that's just getting buried. The Eagles, they're winning games, but their offense is totally broken. Yes, they're 8-2, but their offense, it's inefficient. They're struggling in the red zone. Saquon, A.J. Brown, they just lost that whole explosive element to this whole entire offense. And now they're going to be without their best offensive lineman and one of the best offensive linemen in the league in Lane Johnson, which I'll dive a little bit deeper into in a little bit. But most importantly, the Eagles can't separate on the scoreboard anymore. Every win is a total rock fight. I feel like every game is just a one-possession game, and they're always fighting for yards. And now Lane Johnson being out, this is a massive deal. This isn't a small injury. It's one of the biggest hidden storylines in football. When Lane Johnson's out, Jalen Hurts becomes a totally different quarterback. He has less time to throw, fewer deep shots. He gets hit more. Listen, put it this way. They weren't great with Lane Johnson, and now without him, this is setting up for an absolute disaster. And on the Dallas side, their pass rush, it's been inconsistent this year, but listen, they looked a lot better last week with the addition of Quinnen Williams, and now they get to play a compromised offensive line. This is going to become a legit problem for the Eagles. This pressure, it's going to create long down and distances, and it's going to force Jalen Hurts into the things he struggles with most. 1, timing throws. 2, middle of the field reads. 3, throwing the ball before a receiver breaks. And 4, working late in his progressions. This is going to keep the game tight. You do not want to lay 3.5 points on the road against one of the top home offenses in the league. And that brings me to my next point. Cowboys indoors, totally different team. Dallas in controlled conditions is probably the best offense in football. Let's take a look at their past games. We just saw in prime time against the Raiders, they put up 33 points. All right, they had a stinker against the Cardinals, but I won't get into my Cardinal love again. But that team's a lot better than you think. But they versed the Commanders at home. They put up 44. Versus the Packers, they put up 40. Against the Giants, they put up 40. Dak, he just plays better indoors. The pass protection holds up better. Pickens and Lamb on the outside, they're just unguardable. The pace is higher. The offense scores more. Dallas at home or indoors, they're a top offense in the league. On the road, outdoors, they're just league average. It's a massive split. This matchup comes down to this. The Cowboys, they're healthier, more explosive, more reliable team right now. And the Eagles, their offense is broken, and they can't keep up with this Dallas team in Jerry's World. With Lane Johnson hurt, the Eagles lose their identity on offense, and every drive is going to be an absolute grind. And Dallas at home is a top-tier offense, and the building is going to be rocking. And this version of Philly, does not win these types of matchups on the road. Give me the Cowboys plus 3.5. I think that's an absolute gift, and I think the Cowboys win this outright. All right, next game. We're getting a little chalky here. I mean, we have 3 double-digit favorites on the board, so naturally I'm going to have to take one of them. One that I got my eyes on is the Seahawks minus 12.5 in Tennessee against the Titans. Let's start with the Titans. Team completely falling apart. I mean, I say falling apart, but they were never really together, but they're in full tank collapse mode, whatever you want to call it. They're losers 6 straight. They have a bottom 5 offensive line. They have no run game, no downfield passing, just no identity at all. They're at the stage of the season where the locker room knows it's over. Seattle, meanwhile, fighting for playoff seeding, one of the more talented teams in the league. And speaking of Seattle, their defensive front against this Titans offensive line is an absolute nightmare. Titans offensive line, bottom 3 in pressure rate allowed and sack rate. Seattle's front 7, they're top 10 in pressure, top 5 in run stop win rate. This is a trench mismatch so bad. It's just, I mean, I don't think I need to sell you guys anymore on this pick. This game is just going to be an absolute disaster for the Titans. But one thing I need to talk about was this Seattle Rams game last week. This was a totally fake final. Seattle dominated the Rams. Yes, the scoreboard said 21-19, but Seattle really controlled everything in this game. I mean, they outgained the Rams 414 to 250. Seattle dominated time of possession, and they were constantly in scoring range against one of the top defenses in the league. And when did the disaster strike? In the red zone. Field goal, field goal, field goal. Turnovers. They were -4 in turnover margin, and these short field giveaways were just backbreaking and set up the Rams perfectly. Listen, if you're -4 in turnovers, you're supposed to lose the game by 30 points. Meanwhile, they still had a chance to win the game at the end. Granted, I know it was a parking lot field goal attempt, but you get my point. I'm not concerned about the Seattle team. I actually like them even more after that Rams game because I don't think that's who Sam Darnold is anymore. I mean, I don't think he's the Jets' Sam Darnold. I don't think he's seeing ghosts. I think he slipped up and he had a bad game, and I actually like Seattle to win the NFC this year after seeing that performance. And that's not even so much about that offense. It's about that defense, too. I mean, they're one of the best front sevens in the league, and their secondary is absolute clamps. So listen, great buy low spot for them this week. They completely outplayed the Rams last week. Meanwhile, Titans, they're the worst team in the NFL right now. No offense, no protection, no identity, nothing to play for. Their defense can't rush, can't cover, and can't stop the explosive play. Seattle plays a normal game, not even a great one. They're going to win by 20. Seattle's the right side. It's a buy low, bounce back, smash the bad team spot. For our 5th and final play of the show, we are straight fading Shedeur Sanders. That's right. We're taking the Raiders -3.5 at home against the Browns. And obviously this pick isn't loving the Raiders. There's nothing to love about the Raiders. But it's more so fading this whole Shedeur show, who's just clearly not ready to be an NFL quarterback. Right now, Shedeur, he doesn't read pressure well. He holds the ball too long. And you know, every drop back, he's going to try to turn this game into hero ball. And yes, we won with the Browns last week, +8.5. The handicap was the Browns defense at home. We all know they're a different unit at home, but there's just something that happens to them on the road, whether it just be the turf, the faster field conditions, that they just turn into a completely different defense. And I think the Raiders only need to be fine. Nobody's pretending the Raiders are good. The O-line is bad. The run game is mid. Gino's been terrible to watch, but you don't need fireworks here. You need 1 to 2 real drives, 2 to 3 short fields off sacks or turnovers. And at the end of the day, you have one functional NFL quarterback in Gino at home versus a guy who's just not ready. This whole pick, it comes down to one thing. Can Shedeur Sanders survive 4 quarters against Max Crosby and this Raiders pass rush? The answer is no, he cannot. He could barely survive against a Baltimore Ravens pass rush who's, middle of the pack. The Raiders are going to do 2 things. They'll load the box, stop the early run, and then they're just going to turn Crosby loose on the edge, send an extra rusher or 2. The Browns are going to be 2nd and 10, 3rd and 8, obvious passing situations, and Crosby's just going to pin his ears back and just wreck these drives all by himself. With turnovers plus short fields, I think the Raiders cover this one easy. The defense is going to have multiple sacks, multiple negative plays. We know Shedeur is going to have that, oh my God, why did he throw that interception? You're going to give Geno 2 or 3 short fields, great starting field position, and I think he could absolutely get you 20-plus points at home. If Shedeur is taking, 4 to 6 sacks, 8 to 10 hits, and has constant pressure in his face, this is how you're going to end up with the Browns scoring 7 points. I don't think it's going to take much for this Raiders team, maybe, 2 touchdowns and a field goal to cover this spread. So give me the Raiders minus 3.5 at home against Shedeur Sanders Browns. And that wraps up Week 12. If you heard something you liked, ride it. If you hated everything I said, fade it. But hit that subscribe button, comment your plays, share it with the boys, and let's make some money this weekend. I'll be dropping a moneyline parlay on X this weekend, so be sure to check that out. Until then, enjoy the games, and I will see you next week.